Welcome to the Fatboy Show, Godwin Toko. Hi, Godwin. How are you?
Good, Fatboy. I'm very happy to be here and to have this conversation.
Good to finally meet you.
Yeah, the pleasure is also mine. You know, I listened to you when I was a kid, so...
Yeah.
Seems like you've been on radio forever.
So I saw a photograph of you and I said to myself, this man needs a haircut. So I said, let's bring the interview to a barber show. But I'm kidding.
Yeah. But generally, just to say this, I think that podcasts need to be like this. I don't know. That's my perception. Like, they should be a bit laid back, the Joe Rogan kind of thing. Like, then I see a lot of the Ugandan podcasts a bit more serious and tense, guys in suits, and I'm like, maybe we need to calm down. Let's have it at a restaurant.
No, that's a very good point. And I think we're all, still just trying to figure it out. And I'm happy to see a lot of people attempting to launch their podcasts.
Yeah.
Of course, there's the issue of the extent to which there could be a demand for it.
Yeah.
Ugandans, unfortunately, I feel like they're not too keen on very sort of more thoughtful, long-form conversations, right?
Is that the case?
A lot of the things a lot of people here seem drawn to are sort of more short-form comedic type things, right?
Because when I see Lumbuye makes a video of 5 hours, yeah, and you go and check it after a day and tells maybe 50,000.
Oh yeah,
Lumbuye.
Is that a podcast he does?
Well, he could make it a podcast. It's a monologue of him talking about, I think, well, with all due respect to him, a lot of it is conspiracy theories. Salim Saleh has done these, blah, blah. They're very long. I tell guys...
5 hours.
5 hours.
Okay, that's crazy.
I see, and I see him having the numbers. So I keep thinking, maybe there is an audience that we just need to study a bit more and then see how to tap into it.
Is he here? I'm
ashamed. Turkey.
I'm ashamed to say.
You know Lumbuye?
Oh, wait.
Lumbuye.
The
guy in Turkey.
Is that the guy they issued an arrest warrant for?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
So maybe there's something, I don't agree with whatever he says, but I think there's something people like you should study, people like you and I should study about him, like what gets his audience hooked, that he has 100k views over a video that is so long, yet we keep telling ourselves, a video must be 20 minutes, oh no one will watch it and all that. Yeah, we're also right, but also maybe we can learn from him.
It could be that also, the kind of material
content
is discussing. Like I said, if it's conspiratorial, veering on the extreme, because like I said, he comes out and makes some very strong accusations.
Yeah.
And obviously that makes him a target of the government. They've issued arrest warrants for him. They've been trying to go after him.
Then it gives him a name, the reverse effect.
I think so. So there's an argument to be made that to get attention, you might have to go in that direction.
Yes.
Of really pushing the envelope and, to that end, congratulations to him.
Yes.
It's just, for those of us who are based in Uganda, it's like, and even when I was on FM radio, I used to have these issues with like callers, because you're in the studio, you know what the rules are.
Yes.
You know what UCC says you can and can't say. You have your bosses who tell you what you can and can't say.
Yeah.
All this legality. So you can't like come out and say, Minister X stole this, or politician this killed so-and-so. You can't really say that in sort of traditional media.
The spaces, yes.
But if someone is saying not even in the country and has like a live stream or a podcast and he's saying these things where he's sort of out of reach of the regulators, out of reach of security, I feel like he may enjoy a bit more liberty to say those things.
Yes.
As compared to you and me, depending on what we say on this podcast, I'm sure at the back of your mind, if you say the wrong thing,
you could end up differently.
Our weekends could end up differently.
Yeah, and just to say this, I think digital spaces have become a bit... People have studied them. So there's... Similar to Lumbuye. I follow a bit of news across the continent. So I think it's Sierra Leone. In Sierra Leone, they've had their presidents who have been there for long and they've had issues similar to Ugandan issues. So there was a WhatsApp number that would produce audios. It was a UK registered WhatsApp number. It saved its name as Adebayo. So it would produce long, maybe like 1 hour, 2 hour monologues, voice notes, talking about the government. The most extreme conspiracy theories about the government.
I was killed by so-and-so.
This one is eating people. The president is a cannibal. Now, the problem for the presidency is that these things will go viral. So in the northern part of Sierra Leone tends to be like, a different ethnic group from the president, the guys who want change and all that. Now, businesses like this would put loudspeakers out, play those audios to attract clients. You get, but come to have haircuts as they listen. So it gives, I think the more governments try to clamp down on the media, the more they will lose the plot, because now you push people out. Yeah, I tweet under my name, Godwin Toko. you know who I am, you know my address. Probably there's a file on me somewhere in the security agencies. But if you become so hard on me, well, I can become Adebayo. I'm not saying I can, I want to, but I say I can become, then I'm like, now, if I am Adebayo with this mask, there are things that Toko can never say, but Adebayo Toko can say. So I think, yeah, there's that catch-22.
So let's talk about Toko. Who is Toko? Godwin Toko. Who are you? All I know about you, and when I started to learn about you, is when I saw that you were kind of quite active, tweeting out things in relation to Agora and the activities, and then I found out that you work with them. I don't know if it's an employment relationship. Are you an affiliate? Are you what's your deal? Who are you, and who do you represent?
Generally, I'm a lawyer, a Ugandan, Makerere graduate not long ago, 2018. That's when I left Makerere. Yeah, but
2020?
2018.
2018.
Yeah.
We left Makerere in 2018.
So you're slightly older than you thought.
How old are you?
Early 30s.
Wow.
Yes.
So I am early 50s. So there's a 20-year difference.
So I left Makerere, but even before I left Makerere, I've been a bit more active. So before Twitter, I was more active on social media, Facebook, the days of Facebook. Very, very active. Even in high school, even at Makerere, I got arrested a couple of times because, well, their policies I thought were, well, that's oppressive.
Wait a minute. So even while you were a student at Makerere,
yeah,
you were out there just pissing off the wrong people.
A lot.
What would you be doing to call?
So let's say there's a proposed increment in tuition. Then there are also accountability issues. So my thinking would be that, can we first handle the accountability issues? Because it seems the money could be needed, and I don't have a problem with increasing tuition. But if you increase without really first accounting for what you have, this is going to end up in the same bottomless pit. Yeah. So I engaged in a number of strikes, got arrested a couple of times as a student at Makerere University. Every time there was a strike, my parents would call me and say, I hope you're not participating. Then, of course, the logical answer is, no, I'm not participating. But yeah, they are calling me at the front line. Yeah.
Wow.
So, I have been an activist in a way like that for quite a long time, even back in high school, even in primary school, but also student leadership. So I feel like when you're a student leader, you have this duty to be like the bridge. So let me give you two examples. There was a time I was at Makerere, and when you get into the fourth year, things are tougher. You have so many course units to finish and all that.
What are you studying?
Huh?
You were studying what?
I was studying law.
Okay.
I was studying law. So I got to fourth year there, and then I was less into the strikes. But because I had been arrested a couple of times, and there was this policeman, unfortunately passed on during COVID. It was called Rakamaga. So Rakamaga kind of was the community liaison officer, the good cop. The cops play like the good cop, the bad cop. So when they arrest you, Rakamaga calls you and says, you guys, why are you doing this to you? So it became my title. So there was a time when I was now out of the strike thing. I'm like, let me not strike anymore. So then a group of students had engaged in a strike. So they arrested a number of them. They took them to Wandegea police post. Now, student adrenaline and the vibe, and you're like, let's go pick them. So there was a group of students, I think about 100. They went to Wandegea, and they were across the road. See the road between Wandegea and there's a mosque somewhere there. So they were across the road saying, we are coming. They had stones and all. So Rakamaga called me and said, who sent this to me? I said, man, I don't even know. I'm in the library trying to fight for my academic. He said, this is invading a police post and we can shoot them. You know the laws. And, he played psychology games, first of all. But to an extent, he was also right.
So were you operating like solo, or were you like part of a clique? Also, were you affiliated with any political parties?
No affiliation to political party whatsoever. I've never even belonged to any political party to this day.
Even then? Because I know various parties have purpose chapters.
No, I've never believed in, and Rastas don't believe in partisan politics. So I've never engaged in that. But so I was a student leader. I was a GRC of law school. And I was part of the guild. So guys saw me as a guy who was like their lawyer many times. You're not yet a lawyer, but yeah, you can give me the advice that I need. So Rakavaga calls me and says, come to Wandegea. So I go to Wandegea. Now he put me in a very tight situation. He was telling me, he convinced me that these guys are in the wrong. And I agreed they're in the wrong. Then he told me, now go and tell them to go back to the university. And when they go back to the university, I'll release the guys they want. Now, it was quite tricky. But the good thing is that the group was led by someone I knew. He was the chairperson of, let me not mention his name. He was the chairperson of Micho. So I came and told him, I said, this is the thing. And the good thing is that he agreed. He eventually also realized that, yeah, we are blocking traffic because they blocked the traffic. We're blocking traffic. It's the police post. They could think that we have come here to take guns. And for him, I don't know, man. There are guys who have that vibe. There are people who had it. Mobutu would, for all his ills, there's history that he would talk to soldiers who are rioting and they would eventually stop. So this guy came and told the guys, you guys, here is Toko. Toko is going to bring these guys to the university in the next 1 hour. If he doesn't, we are going to stone him. Now let's march him up to the university. So these guys march to the university.
So wait, so I mean, were you ever incarcerated for your...
Yes.
Like, for how long?
There was a time it was 3 days. That's the longest as a student.
But you were never charged?
No, I was never charged. It was just normal incarceration.
So where did that...
Well, there were times they would pick you. There was then there would be a strike. And then they're like, Toko must be part of the leadership. Let's go and pick him. Like you're in your own,
for you, even though you had nothing.
You had nothing to do. You're like, for this party, that's I assume they would be. Advise them to go, and they're like, yeah, let's pick him as well. So it was a bit of a ping pong. So on that particular day, of course, eventually Karamaga kept his word, which was very, very thoughtful. Because we shall stone him after 1 hour. So these guys come out, and then the students see you as their hero, the lawyer, and all that.
But what doesn't make sense to me is, I mean, if you're that active in those spaces, surely you should have drawn the attention of, parties who would have been interested to recruit you.
Not that I did.
No one ever approached you to say, hey,
I did.
Well, DP chapter, what NRM chapter, FTC.
2020, the guys who started what became NOP, at that time were people power. Then, I won't mention names, but the top hierarchy reached out to me and they wanted me to join. And I told them my reasons why I wouldn't join. I told them, you see, you're saying you like what I do. But then if you like what I do, the problem is that I'm going to join you, then I'll keep doing what I do, and then you'll dislike me for doing what I do. Because probably I'll tell you guys that, hey, I think here we should have done it better. So for me, it's always that, can I do it? A space like Agora is much better for me.
Yeah, but what I don't understand is, obviously, it would appear you saw yourself as an agent for change, which is why you were doing what you were doing.
Yeah, change, yes, but also social justice.
Yeah, but don't you realize that the most effective way to be a change agent is to collaborate with people? Why at the time, because I know eventually you joined an organization, but why at the time did you not see a need to collaborate with people that you thought you could build something with?
Yeah, I didn't join them, but there are things we worked on together.
Okay.
There are strikes that were led by particular groups. And you know that this group is affiliated to this particular political party, and you're part of them. And also, just to say this, the idea of political parties in this country, and at the university particularly, is very fluid. People don't see the boundaries.
Fluid how? Like they change?
So people, they change every time. Like, can I mention names like maybe Lilian Abe, Fiona Nyamutoro, so many of the senior powerful NRM leaders now were in FDC back then, but at the university. So I feel like there's that prudence, that commitment to being in the party just isn't there. Okay. So if it was, maybe I would have thought twice. But because it wasn't there, so it was just another thing. Guys go to parties to get tickets, and there's some parties guaranteed you the guild presidency, like FDC did at the time at university, FDC and DP, UID. And I think now it's NOOP. Most times in Makerere University, if NOOP endorses someone for the guild presidency, they're more likely to win. So I think that's how guys view it. But yeah, so it's because they're also not that serious.
All right, so you graduate. What year did you graduate?
I left Makerere in 2018. Then I go to LDC. When I was joining LDC, everyone told me one thing. Okay, we know you like justice and all that, but this place is different. So just put your head down. It's 9 months and you get through.
I mean, if it's LDC, let's be real. The time for games is over. The failure rate is so high.
Yeah.
You would have to focus on your education 100%.
And that's why I have respect for Agatha. Because she literally took the risk. So, failure rate at LDC many times is not because you're a failure. So LDC, first of all, comes from this attitude of, it must be very tough. Yeah, the guys, they engage with you on an attitude of, I must make
But that's what we keep hearing, that students are failing to know.
I don't think it's that bad. So for instance, there was a year, I think the Agatha's year, when so many students failed. And it turned out that of the so many students who failed, many of them appealed. Now, the problem with LDC's appeal process is that most times when you appeal, by the time the appeal is done, people have graduated. So meaning you cannot graduate with them. Now, I think Agatha kind of challenged the system, went as far as Parliament. You've heard the rumors that she wanted a job at Parliament. That was hogwash because she went to petition about issues at LDC.
Okay.
She went as far as the Attorney General's office. And it turned out people's papers were remarked. And I think close to 50% of those who had been failed had passed.
Wait. So what's this? Sabotage?
I don't know. It's sabotage. Maybe
sex for marks.
There's sex for marks. At LDC, there was a lot of sex for marks. There was a lot
of LDC.
At LDC. And that's why I'm saying that it's unfortunate because the attitude created. I mean, at LDC, you're now a lawyer, actually. You're a lawyer aiming to be an advocate. You're looking for the practicing certificate to go to courts. So I think like that should be the place where lawyers stand up the most and say, yeah, I'm the lawyer, I can stand up. But you can't do it at LDC. You can do it at the university. You can even do it in high school. You get it? So that's the conundrum we have here. People are taken to LDC and they are made so docile. They just sail through. And unfortunately for me, when I go to LDC also, I was a bit stressed. I had issues, family, and also I was like, you know what? To hell, let me just get done. Unfortunately, first try, I was done, I graduated, I left. I know many people who, for many reasons, spend long. Yeah, but also the process is very grueling. So many times people who go to LDC, especially if you're already working, because maybe you're a lawyer. So what from my own research is that many guys who go there and they're already working.
Wait, are you allowed to work as a lawyer after graduation, but without
going to court? Yeah, there's something called holding out. Holding out is where you shouldn't go to court, but you can present yourself as a lawyer. You saw that meme of the Kenyan who apparently won so many. It turned out to be a factoid. It was not really true. It wasn't true.
No, because he won all his cases and he's never
gone to law saying it's impossible. Like, but there are things you see on Twitter and you're like, this must be a lie. Like,
so the argument I see people make now is that now with AI, people aren't even going to need lawyers. What do you think about that?
It's possible.
So is that overrated, overblown?
Yeah, it's a bit somewhere in the middle. I think a lot of jobs are not going to be needed. AI is going to affect so many jobs. And I like listening to podcasts where they host people like Sam Altman, is he the guy of OpenAI? Or maybe Elon Musk talk about these things. And maybe because they have a monetary interest, they seem a bit more of, well, it won't be that bad. Yeah. And there's evidence. See, I think a lot of history. There's evidence that since the 60s, every single technology people have said, this is going to take away all the jobs. This is going to take away the jobs. The era of the computers in the 2000s, people like, jobs are done. And it indeed took away some jobs. But it also created so many other jobs. Yeah. So I think as human beings, so for instance, if you're in Uganda and you're a lawyer, I think the first thing is that how many Ugandans have a lawyer today? You get like a conventional lawyer. How many people have a lawyer? I think it's about 10% of Ugandans, or even less than that. So I don't think the Ugandan lawyer's job is at stake yet. But because if someone can't afford a normal lawyer, probably they don't have the sophistication to get to the point of having AI advise them on all things. And then two, AI seems to have this thing of being, there are questions you ask AI about Uganda and won't get them right. So I think for Uganda to get tailor-made AI lawyers, that I think it is still a long, long way off, maybe 20, 50 years. Yeah, so I think, well, every job is going to be affected by AI. But we can only know to what extent when you leave it. Yeah, so I'm somewhere in the middle there.
Right, so you completed LDC.
Yeah, fine. LDC.
Now you're an advocate.
Yes.
What happens? This is what year?
This is 2019 and then COVID starts. Okay, before COVID, so I looked for a job. I got a job somewhere where they were offering me space to work. 500,000.
Law firm?
That's a law firm. It was about 500,000. It was an office. They'll give me about 500,000. But then the thing is,
to do what job?
It was more of research, legal writing, advice. So, but then the thing is that they gave me an office space that I could use to make more money. So I was making more money through the office space. Then one day I just woke up and said, is this where I want to be? Then I'm like, no. So I went back home and wrote an email and said, you know what, I have issues, so I'm out. The good thing I'd just been there for a month or two. Then I listed the list of all people I thought could employ me in Uganda. I'm like, you're good enough. At least one of these guys should employ you. So they were ranking order, like, this is the best for me. This is the list. So I picked the phone and started calling them. So the first one I called was Godwin Toko. You know Godwin Toko?
No.
He has an NGO called Gliss. Okay. So I called Godwin Toko and said, Godwin, I need a conversation. Now, Godwin is a workaholic. And sometimes insanely a workaholic. So Godwin tells me, this was a Friday, he said, let's meet on Monday. But I had friends working with him who told me, this guy could be a good employer. So to me, you come on Monday at 5 a.m., 5:30 a.m. in Tinda. So I was staying in Chikoni, Makerere. So I asked around and the guy said, if the guy says 5:30 and you go there 5 minutes past 5:30, that's it. You've lost the opportunity. So I barely slept that night. But then by about 3 I was up preparing. 4 I was on a cold boda in a suit going to Tinder. So I got there and then around 5:30-ish, I saw him driving. But there were these rich guys of Ministers Village jogging who would see me and say, this is a thug. But I had a suit. Thugs really wear suits. I think that gave them some confidence. Okay. So he comes and he's like, Toko, you're here? And then I'm like, yeah. So he asked me, what do you want to meet me about? Because I not told him yet at that point. I'm like, straight up, I want a job. I said, why did you ask me of all? I said, I think this is the place I want to work. I see what you do. I see what I do. I feel like Then he said, okay, no problem. Come and start working. He gave me a date like a month from then. Said, come and start working on this day. No contract signed, nothing. Now, this is 2021 meanwhile now. So Godwin gives me a date and I go home. I think 2 weeks from that, lockdown. So they locked down the country. Then I'm home and I'm thinking, at some point I realized that there was that bit of opening now. People are going back to work. My mind was like, do I call Godwin to go and start working? Or do I just go there? Then I was like, the right thing to do is don't bother him. Go and sit in office. Because the date he gave you, that's passed anyway. So I got to start sitting at Greece, reading newspapers, doing my private work, whatever. Asking guys, who needs some help? I'm here to help you. So I pick stuff they're doing, help them.
By this time, were you yet active on social media?
Very active.
All right, so...
Because I knew Godwin knew me from social media.
Ah,
yeah.
Okay.
Godwin does what I do, but is a bit more older.
So that's what I'm interested in. Yeah. Because, you graduate from campus,
But then at campus, I was very active on Facebook.
All right, because for me, I think I started to catch wind of you much later, I guess. Career. It's already began crossing paths.
Yes.
So would you say that given your, your activity on social media in those years, catching the attention of people that then gave you opportunities,
yes,
how is it that you then became connected to Agora?
So Greece is how I get connected to Agora. At Greece now we start a lot of research, publications, and all that. Then 2021 still, Twitter Spaces come. Remember?
During lockdown,
the Kabushenga started and I was like, this thing is revolutionary. I just liked it. Yeah. So I hosted a couple of Twitter Spaces under my name. Medical people, like, what should we do about COVID, blah, 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 and stuff like that. I hosted them to Pro. And then one time, Agatha. So I met Agatha at law school. Agatha was a year below me at law school. She was doing a second degree. But we never chatted. We never talked. I just know that girl is a year ahead of me. And so one time I was at Greece and then she asks me and says, can we talk? And then we exchange emails and said, can we have this platform? I see you hosting spaces. And this is a good deal because a lot of people now listen in. But because Agatha had worked a long time with mainstream media, NTV, NBS, and I think radio, Uganda Radio Network, the Independent magazine. But I think it became a bit more, the pressing was so hard. So these presses became a bit more self-censored.
Okay.
So she's like, no, let's get the alternative.
And Twitter Spaces.
Perfect idea, yeah.
So first tell me something. So what was the feedback you were getting? Were a lot of people tuning into your spaces?
50, 70, which was good because this
so it's the humble beginnings, isn't it?
Yeah, really very humble beginnings. So guys would come in and listen and give feedback and all that. And it started picking up, right? And there were so many people started having spaces at that time. Many of them eventually, of course, went under, but we kept ours. So I don't want to say that was the start of Agora, but that's how I got to meet Agatha. And then, of course, along the way, we begin to think, can we have an activists organization? Because that wasn't there at that time. Most organizations were doing the normal NGO work, sit in office, write reports, do all this, which I have a lot of respect for. I think contributes a lot to society. But then I also felt like there was a need for some people to just use this space to say, can we look at parliament and the corruption there? Yeah. So that's how we meet. A couple of friends. So I don't mention names, but Agora is much bigger than Agatha, Spire, and Toko. We're probably how many people? In the tens.
Yeah, because I think we're about to get to that story. So we're still at the point where you and Agatha are starting to talk to each other, starting to discuss ideas, and it looks like something's beginning to crystallize.
Yes.
All right, so how do we go from those conversations to now, boom, Agora?
So we'd meet occasionally and think, we need to start something. Those passing conversations. It was normally Friday. So there's a place we would meet over drinks.
I'm going to assume that the relationship was purely professional.
100%.
Okay.
But it was not just Agatha and I. So at that point, we were about 5 people.
All right.
About 5 people.
Okay.
We'd meet and talk about these things. Can we start something? And then eventually we're like, yes, let's start something. And then we tried to register. So the name Agora, interestingly, was not our first idea. We wanted conventional names, Center for Research, Human Rights and Accountability, such names. But the system in Uganda is such that when you try to register those names, they'll flag them. They'll say, these ones want to do something that we shouldn't. So the system kept flagging. You would submit, and the URL speaker would say, there's a problem with your name.
Yeah.
Like, so what's the problem with the name? Well, just think about it. Then you know that it's because of it. Then I said, you know what?
Come up with a name.
Let's come up with a name they don't understand, but which means what we want. So Agora, from reading history, ancient Greece, and I'm a big fan of ancient Greece, especially Julius Caesar, and that era. I read a lot about that. So I'm like, Agora was this place where guys would go and meet and share ideas. Mostly, of course, men. It was not
the Greek word, right?
Greek
Agora.
word. Let's go and meet and share ideas, fight with each other, but verbally. And so I was like, if we use the name Agora, most likely these guys won't understand. Then I searched, there's a place.
It sounds like agriculture.
Yeah.
I might think you guys are.
For a long time, guys thought to pick, some guys thought to pick our initials. So Agatha, Godwin, we have a colleague called Otafire. So guys are like, oh, these guys.
For basically, you had them running around in circles.
Yeah, so
confused them.
So I got the name Agora, Center for Research.
All right, so you came up with the name.
Yes. Then we, because I'd also registered companies in the past that wanted to do things like that, but then I would pick like the Zulu word for human rights. So there's an organization I registered as a lawyer called Oburungushwa. They registered it without thinking twice. But I think it's the Zulu word to mean accountability. If I had said accountability, they probably would have flagged it. But no one understands Zulu. So they think that these are... So yeah, that's how the name Agora. Now we registered the organization called Agora. Then along the way, we have a couple of friends joining. The idea is, can we have a place where people who think alike, activists, have a place, they come together. So to this day, Agora has this idea that if there's an activist out there whom we think that can join and contribute, can we have them on board? We need the expertise, but they also need to be with us. There's a bit of protection if you're in a group.
If I may ask,
yes.
And please don't take offense, but when you say we came together and we talked about creating something, an organization, were you thinking more in professional terms, career terms,
no,
or more sort of not humanitarian, but really sort of being a change agent? Was it more a sort of change thing, or was it more, hey,
the latter,
guys, wait, let me finish. Guys, there's money in this. EU has grants for civil society groups. Let's create something. Because forgive me for being cynical, but you would agree there's a lot of people in those spaces for whom this is their priority, right?
That's true.
So are you saying that didn't factor at all in the decision to sort of create an organization that could be registered and to operate and to begin sourcing funds?
So at that point, each of us was a social activist in their own right. Independently. So the idea was, if we came together, the first thing we were looking at was the protection. In the sense of, if we are 5 and they pick 1, the 4 are going to do whatever they can to take out to get back the 1. But also, if you're 5 and you're an organization, it becomes harder to pick 1. Because you pick 1, the 4 are still they're still following the blueprint of the organization that was there. About funding, so social justice of this kind requires a lot of money as well. Yeah. So sometimes I travel as far as Arua. I've traveled to Hoima, I don't know how many times, because there were some evictions there. Women were raped and all that. Sometimes traveling there, I mean, you're going to stay in a hotel, you're going to spend on transport, you're going to spend on all this. And because it go to a point where it becomes like a full-time thing.
Obviously, you have to feed yourself.
But also there are jobs, there are things you do in Uganda, and then you say, I can never be employed by the government. Maybe another government would, but the current government would never employ me now. I've crossed certain lines. And also Uganda is a very conservative society. Even when some people are in the civil society space, they don't want certain kind of pushes. So if you start that kind of push, they're like, I can't employ it anymore. I know civil society events where they would invite people and then they'll say, we can't have Agora for reasons ABCD, because they are doing what we want, but they're doing it in a way that annoys people.
You think there's some gatekeeping where, hey, we're the big boys?
I think there are.
These are some young kids.
I think they're
encroaching on our territory.
Yeah, I think there
keep them out.
Was a bit of that, but also the civil society space has a lot of people who are very, very progressive, very, very welcoming of organizations. And the good thing I could say is that those are more than those who are not. You get it? And it's not just the civil society space. Maybe to surprise you, there are people in government who are the biggest fans of Agora. Yeah, like you meet someone, and yeah, the nature of government is that they have their beef internally. So sometimes you're going after the guy they have beef against, and they're like, you're fighting for us. Then you turn around and come to them, and they're like, these guys are bad. Yeah, there's that as well. But so the idea of money, to put it plain, was that the money then facilitates the work. We have had a lot of grant rejections. We've never been funded by the EU. Yet, interestingly, the EU now gives a human rights award, and I think the last 3 winners are all members of Agora. Yeah, but
that's true, right?
Yeah, that's true. They're not giving us any funding. Each time I meet people and tell them about Agora, and they do, you guys have immense potential to get money. Maybe we do have the immense potential to get money, but also just to show that it's really not the main thing. It is about the work. Many people see what we have done and they think like, wow, you've done so much with Solito. Yeah. So yes, the money factor is a very minor.
So maybe let's just take one step back. So I'm interested to explore the issues that you felt needed to be addressed for which the organization was needed. Because, mostly thus far we've been speaking in vague terms, in terms of activism.
Yeah.
But what in particular, were there particular areas where you saw there was a gap, maybe in the provision of legal services for vulnerable people? Was it an issue of where you thought there wasn't enough attention given to accountability in government? Like, where were the gaps what were the gaps you saw for which you said, hey, we need to move in there, we need to be active, we need to push things forward? What were those?
Accountability, both in the terms of corruption, but also in the terms of accountability in the sense of, for instance, human rights abuses, human rights violations. So that's also has to do with accountability. Those were the two main areas, yeah, accountability and issues around human rights. So this is 2021. You just come out from an election, yeah. Those days when you're meeting, yeah, and there's all these abductions happening around that time. There's all these cases of torture happening. So yeah, those are the things that we really wanted to talk about, and we saw that mainstream media was, to their credit, talking about. But we also thought that maybe they needed a second hand. Maybe they needed a push. Maybe there are things that needed to be said out loud that they were not saying out loud that you can say on Twitter, reasonably say with some level of protection. And you see, I don't beef journalists. I understand the media space. I understand the landscape.
Yes, there is this thing called UCC we also have to deal with. And
I was listening to a podcast recently in South Africa. There's a podcast I listened to, and someone was saying that when you have a radio station or a TV station, it's like a plane, like Kenya Airways or Uganda Airlines. Uh-huh. Each time Uganda Airlines goes, it's like you've surrendered everything of that company in the hands of the two pilots. If they crash it, it can give you some bad PR for 10 years. The company can even go bankrupt on the activities of two pilots. Mm-hmm. So I understand that radios have to, as much as possible, gag their journalists. Because like you put the entire radio in the hands of Toko, who at that point you're not in the studio, you cannot stop what he's going to say. It's not a pre-recorded show, he can say anything. So you probably say the most ridiculous thing that you would not have said as the boss of the radio station, as the manager. Uh-huh. But Femi can say, and then UCU comes not for him, but for the station. You get it? Yeah, so I also understand that ecosystem. Yeah, but it was mainly those issues that I wanted to address.
So you saw an opportunity that, hey, here are areas where we can amplify the voices, amplify messages, ways that traditional media are currently constrained.
Yes.
Because you're right, if we fly too close to the sun, UCC comes,
flies too close to the sun,
they'll give you a warning.
Yeah.
They'll suspend your license and things of that nature. And that's where I can clearly see an advantage to having sort of free agents,
yes,
like unencumbered by those same limitations, who can sort of push those messages further. Yes. And I know right now they are trying to control the flow of information on social media. Yes. I haven't seen them enjoy much success in that realm, though.
No, I don't think they will enjoy much success. So for me, my fear with UCC is that social media, and let me first give you an example. Last year, I worked on cases where they arrested the ones I know about 15. Yeah. And this is the absurd bit of how this system operates. They will not pick Spire. They will not pick Jameson. They will not pick Agatha. They will pick some random kid in Manafa
who put a TikTok
video saying, I think there's a lot of corruption in this country. I think so-and-so is corrupt. Spire and Fatboy probably say 10 times what that kid is saying. But they know that once they pick Spire and Fatboy, Toko, Agatha, everybody is going to know that Fatboy has been picked and they're going to come to push for your release. Now for them, they pick the most forgettable, the one who is likely to go under the radar. Yeah. So they picked about 15. Manafa, Mubende. These kids were 18, young kids, and then they were
he has built the president,
the guy whose case we are following with as the organization who is serving 7 years Noria prison farm in Germany.
Now, for what crime?
I think he made a video. It's a comical thing.
He was bashing.
It was a comical thing. He made a video. He called it Dog Nation. So he put a sponge over his head, said he's a judge, and there were dogs that he would beat. That this is the Speaker of Parliament in Dog Nation. You're very corrupt. This is the president. You're very corrupt. And he would latch to those dogs. Now they're like, you've insulted President Museveni. You've insulted Muhoozi. So I think there's a gentleman. I forget his name, but I'll remember it along the way. Hopefully. So Entebbe Police Post is not far from the SFC base. So I think the SFC guys who are at Entebbe Police Post, they spend money. They drive as far as Hoima. The last guy was picked in Hoima. They drive as far as Hoima, Manafa, Mubende, Mpiji. They pick these guys, bring them there. 90% of these guys come from families that are more humble than my family and your family. 90% of these guys can't afford a lawyer. So most times, the average Ugandan taken there and said, this video abuse of Museveni is like, I'm very sorry. These guys are literally sentenced, crying. They don't have lawyers, they don't know their rights, and they're sentenced. So this guy is serving 7 years in jail, only a prison farm. So if he had been, for him, when I was there, he told me that, I wish they had put me in Lusita. My mother could afford the, 3,000 from Mukono by taxi to Gans. In all years, a mother, no one has ever seen him. We went there to visit him, and he was like, this is the first time I have had visitors. I am so happy.
After how long in custody?
Maybe 2 years. No, maybe 1 year. And he was, his requests, can I have a pair of gumboots because I have to go and farm in the prison farm and I go barefoot and things prick my feet. And you're thinking, how can we be so inhuman as a country? You get it? Like, all for what? This young man made that video. Perfect. Pick him, making up an example by saying, you're going to sweep the streets of Entebbe for a week. I don't think you'll make it a gig. Yeah? But
so
that punitive.
So to your point, they pick people like that.
Yeah.
Mostly to make an example out of them, right?
Yeah, and I think they're not successful because the fact that they have picked 15 and more are still doing it means that they're not succeeding. Maybe then the point is to try something else. Yeah, and most of these guys, you see, the speaker, Muhoozi, Museveni, Janet. Like, it's that pattern. Like, those 4 people mainly for whom they arrested. And if you're President Museveni, yeah, I think he probably doesn't even give the orders. But of course, if you're the president, the back ends with you.
I think in instances like this, I think what happens is that it's the people around them.
Overzealous people around.
Overzealous, who maybe want to curry favor. So they want to be seen to be doing their work,
yes,
you know.
Yes.
And
the problem is, each time these guys are picked, these stories go as far as Al Jazeera and BBC. When you check the original TikTok video, maybe 100 views? 1,000 views, then he is picked. The guy becomes the subject of 81-year-old president of Uganda has arrested a man, blah, blah, blah. And then the video, first of all, goes viral. Yeah,
right.
So there's that counterproductive.
So to those overzealous people that are chasing around these, do you think maybe there's an argument to be made that it's actually counterproductive? That in fact, they're making the president look bad when they go over such small fish. It almost, because I feel like it would feed into an oppression narrative.
Yes.
Like, look, you're making the opposition's argument for them. If the opposition want to argue they're terrorizing Ugandans,
that is
all they have to do is point to a guy who got picked for posting a TikTok. And that makes the case.
Yeah, and it's the whole chain. In fact, for me, the bigger party in all this are the judicial officers. I think they should know better. Like 100%, they should know better.
You think by the time it gets to their desk, they should say,
yes,
this bullshit.
You're going to go to jail for a week. Many times they first remand them, meanwhile. So the guy is on remand for 3 months as the trial is happening. Why? He made a TikTok video. And then the guy is sentenced 7 years, 5 years, 3 months. And you're sentencing an 18-year-old to go to a prison where they are murderers, they are rapists, and is 18 because of a TikTok. So what are you making of this boy? Like,
it's going to come out like a criminal, a real hard
It's going to come up because he's spending the night with criminals who are telling him how they murdered a woman, how they raped a woman, how they stole money, how they robbed a bank. I feel like it shouldn't get to that level yet because Ugandan prison systems, I think there are countries like South Africa where convicts and people on remand are kept differently, or capital offenses are kept differently. But in Uganda, that's not the system. Literally, you go to Ugandan prison and there's yellow and orange. Each time you see the yellow, that's either someone on remand or of a lighter offense.
Okay.
The guys on orange, the guys wearing orange are the guys that this rape, defilement, robbery, and then there is white, which most times you'll never see, but that's death row. Guys who are on death row. Yeah, now, so to your point, it's counterproductive in that first. But also the second sense is, if I tweet under the name Fatboy, and everyone knows Fatboy, they know where he works, they know his address, they know how he looks like, he has 1 million pictures on the internet. Don't be so hard on what Fatboy says. Because then Fatboy can assume an alias that doesn't exist. Or Voltaire or Kwahinga, Tom Voltaire or Kwahinga. I don't know where he is. There's an account on Twitter that has that name. I don't think it's the old Tom Voltaire or Kwahinga. But if the cover name becomes that, if I am tweeting under Toko, they'll pick me. Okay, let me become Tom Voltaire or Kwahinga. And I see how you pick him. Because with modern technology, it's so easy for me to create a bot that you can never track. Yeah, I know people who do that. I haven't thought about it yet, but it is so easy that I know how to make sure that I'll have this bot. you will never ever know that this is me. Or like the account that is on Twitter and says, "Is Museveni dead yet?" I don't know who is that account. You've seen it? So crazy. It's every day. That's like, no. So that's pseudo account. You can never tell who runs it. Yeah, because these things are very easy. So for me, to the people who are overzealous, sometimes these young people probably go overboard, according to your own gauge. Yeah, maybe they go overboard. In my own estimation, I am an ultra guy of freedom of speech. I want you to say whatever you want to say. Yeah, I have told guys that as long as you're not being, so I don't believe in things like people say that, oh, there is, they call it what, cyber violence. I don't believe in that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, ones can hurt, but I believe that it's just what, block the guy, move on. You get, like for me, that is the thing. Go and you're abusing them, yeah, I'll block you and move on.
What do you think about General Muhoozi's freedom of speech? Do you think he utilized it well?
I think so. One, he's the army officer. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So rationally speaking, there are positions you hold where the publish button on Twitter should be a bit heavier than the rest. Yeah. I can go and say anything on Twitter. It should be easy. But if President Museveni went and said today that I have decided to invade Kenya, now that's different. If I said, everyone will be like, that guy probably had too much last night. It's showing because they know Toko doesn't command.
So by virtue of his status and his office and position, you think he should be more restrained?
I think some of our streets go overboard. In as much as I believe in 100% flu. So if he stopped being an army officer, whatever he's treating, 100% okay. But there are some particular tweets and a lot of them. But tweeting about Nyash, Beyonce, I will start 100%. That's your right. Tweet about them.
But if it's about army stuff,
going to war,
arresting people,
yeah, I'll behead the leader of opposition. That's why they make news. That's why the New York Times will publish an article and say the army command of Uganda said he will behead the leading opposition presidential candidate, because then it passes the threshold since it's him. So for me, I believe in people saying whatever they want to say.
Now, what do you think could be the motive for that? Obviously, if it was a strategy to increase his prominence and popularity and his following, he certainly succeeded. Because I think his account is very widely followed. I don't know how many followers he has now, but it must be a million by now. Yeah. Do you not think that all this attention then positions him to do two things? One, to present distractions where they may be needed. You know, like if, let's say, there's something going on that the government would rather not have people dwell on, maybe just have him fire some spicy tweets and people will be on that for the next 3 days. Or it could be that a way of boosting his prominence and stature so that in future, if there's serious political intentions for him, he would have amassed that following.
Yeah, I think it's a case of throwing the baby with the bathwater then. Because one, I could mention for you who have close to the 1 million followers. Kanari Mugume, my friend. I think he has over 1 million followers. I don't think he treats things more as he treats. Yeah, I think by the virtue of his office, he would have gotten those numbers. Museveni, Bobby Wine, they all have 3 million, 2 million followers, and they don't get close to that. You see, Uganda is a very interesting country. We love controversy. I think the year Desire Luzinda's nudes leaked, I was at campus, right? So she was the most googled woman in East Africa. But is that good for you? Like, so do you want to leak your nudes so that maybe you do? But so I think a lot of what Muhoozi has put on Twitter is a lot of what people perceive him to be. I have met people who have met him who say he is a very nice guy. I haven't met him, but I have met his tweets.
The person tweeting and the person we see on video see like two different people.
Yeah, but you see,
I think social media just brings out a different animal in all of us.
Yeah, so I would advise him to have a pseudo account. Those things, like it would be so good. Like if he had a pseudo account, named something else, like the God of Bachwezi, where he puts these things. For me, I think so. But so yeah, back to the point. I think it's a big price to pay to have destruction. Yeah, the Ugandan government can have legitimate destruction. Any government can have legitimate destruction without paying the price. If Muhoozi is the crown prince, if he's going to be the president of Uganda, and this is just to get him the following. You know, there's the argument that you guys tweet and how many people on Twitter, which is a legitimate argument. Yeah. But to get to a point where I travel a bit once in a while. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I traveled last year. There was the Parliament of South Africa. I met one of the MPs, still on the particular committee, and so I got to know him because I go to the Parliament of South Africa, which is South Africa is a very interesting country. So as we were entering the gate, the first thing I saw was that no public toilet inside, and I was like, oh, this is insane. Like, no public toilets inside the parliament. Like, it should be obvious. But yeah, they have a homelessness problem, so some people want to go and use the facilities inside and all. Yeah, but back to the point. So there was an accountability committee. Last year there was a report, a very damning report on South African Army, which said that the army is not the seat. They have one functional navy boat. They have how many helicopters. To my surprise, the day I was supposed to go to parliament just to follow up proceedings was the day they were talking about their military issues. I was like, this would never be my country. First of all, these things are discussed very far away, not even in parliament. But the point is that after the discussion, so we got to meet the person presented. And then I was with a Mozambican, Kenyan, South Africans, and some other people from other countries. So everyone introduces themselves. And they say, I'm from Uganda. And then he's like, oh, you're from the land of the guy who tweets. And I'm like, oh, no. So like that gentleman, a member of parliament in South Africa, knows probably about Mhozi's tweets. But then so what? That doesn't know about him as the brilliant guy who tweets. How many followers does Mwenda have on Twitter? Isn't it close to 1 million? But you see, like, he tweets things that are really, really up there. Like, you would never accuse him of tweeting.
Higher, bro. At least he will discuss ideas and
I think Mozi can discuss ideas. Mozi has a book that I've read and I've enjoyed. It's a book about African warfare.
yes,
Shaka Zulu, blah, 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 and all that. The Bachwezi, how they fought and all. Can he make it his point that every weekend I'm going to share my ideas of what African warfare looks like? How are we as Africans going to deal with terrorists? I think there's an audience for that we want to hear that, not from Toko, not from Fatboy, who have read the book, but from the man who is actually in the theaters.
I think there's an opportunity there because, I mean, obviously, he's gone to some very good places, good schools. He's an educated guy, so surely, and has written a book. There's so many other things he could be discussing through social media rather than the spicy tweets, as entertaining as they are. Because I'm going to be honest, I do find some of them quite entertaining. And there are times he will I feel like he will cross the line. Many will agree he will cross the line. Even his dad will concede he sometimes crosses the line. But yeah, maybe less of that and more of sort of maybe more.
Imagine if Mozi had a podcast where he talked about what it means to be the son of a president in Mozi's shoes. I mean, like, there are very few people in Africa who have been sons of presidents since they were 8.
Yeah.
You get. Museveni became president when Mozi was 8. Mozi is now 52. He's been president from 8 years to now. Like, I just imagine if he tweeted about, like, what is his life like as the son of a president in that, like, that's a very, very, like, very few of us will ever, very few people ever will ever understand what that means. If Mozi tweeted about, warfare, if Mozi tweeted about his life at Sandhurst, if Mozi tweeted about the war in Ukraine and gave solutions to how this war should be ended, like, I think his followers would not just be Ugandan, Bachwezi, knowing, Nyashlav.
So there's a bit of a missed opportunity.
Yeah, I think.
Okay. Well, maybe that's something for him to consider. Hey, free advice from Godwin and Fatboy here. Yeah. Okay. So back to you and to AGORA.
Yes.
In recent years, AGORA has made headlines.
Yes.
Most notably, in coming to the defense of prominent and non-prominent people who find themselves in the crosshairs of this government.
Yeah.
Recently, there were some protests in which people were arrested. The March to Kampala,
March to Parliament
protests. And I know that AGORA was very instrumental in trying to raise funds to coordinate legal services for those who had been incarcerated.
Yeah.
And I don't know if any of those people that are still in jail?
No.
They've all been released by
I think it was by the second month, all of them were out. Yeah. By the start of this year, all the cases were dismissed.
All right. And thanks in part to AGORA and their efforts.
Yeah. And other people that did a lot of good things.
Okay. So, in the months that followed, you also attracted some negative attention.
Yeah.
Some of it did come from me, which is something I wanted us to address. So basically, there started to arise a lot of critics of AGORA, myself among them at the time.
Yeah.
And that is when you and I started to really engage each other and to engage, right? And I thought those were very exciting, very fun, and very intense.
Yeah.
So what was your view of what I was doing? Why did you feel that I was being unnecessarily negative? Did you feel I had good intentions? Do you feel I have an agenda? What did you make of some of the things I was saying about what you guys were doing?
The first thing is that I thought you were misled like a lot of people. AGORA, as an organization, can apply for funding and get it. Sometimes successfully, most times unsuccessfully. Yeah? What happened during the March Parliament was that a group of people asked Agatha, who is the team leader at AGORA, that people are getting arrested. How can we contribute? Let me tell you, the day of the March Parliament, there's a friend of mine called Marvin Sassi. He's a member of the National Unity Platform, a very amazing guy. You should have him one of these days.
Okay.
He knows a lot. So I was with him. Then we were supposed to go and join the protest. Marvin is a lawyer, I am a lawyer. So at some point, as we were going, we're like, they arrested the Pfizers from the basement of... So then we thought, if they have started arresting people, what's the point in us getting arrested? But there's a point in us trying to get those who are arrested out as much as we can. So we go to Ginger Road where they were. From there, I go to Kabalagala. Kabalagala, I found that they arrested someone whom I got out by simply sweet-talking the DPC, the OCCID. I sweet-talked him, we had a conversation, and I engaged him and said, hey, you're Ugandan. So what's the point? And eventually released the guy, which was successful. There were guys who were taken to Wandegea, Nakawa, it was all over the place. So there was a lot of movement. Now, there were a group of people who started asking Agatha that, you see, I can't protest. I work a government job. I can't protest. I wear suits like Fatboy. So, but can I contribute to this cause? Because I believe in the cause that these guys are marching against corruption. And I think corruption is a cancer in this country. So Agatha said, okay, you can send money to numbers. There were two numbers, Agatha's numbers and Mutuzo's number. So those guys received some money. I don't know how much to this day. But unfortunately first, the first group of guys who were released, there was cash bail. Now, cash bail is where you guarantee some money that they've arrested Toko, so Fatboy, Agatha, and Spy are going to stand surety for him. But each of them is going to bound himself with 500,000. That if Toko doesn't come back, your money is forfeited. Now, that money for about 100 people arrested becomes a lot of money. So the part of the money was supposed to cover those costs of guys who get arrested. Some rare cases, like Mama D, fed some people, some lawyers and some guys who were marching. Can we, if there's money that has been sent, can we also facilitate that? So it doesn't have to be a very heavy sacrifice on our end. Now, in the aftermath of what happened, that money became the subject of discussion. The first thing. People were saying that, can this money be given to the marchers? At a time when the government said, people are being mobilized to march, so they're going to be paid. So for me, that was unfair.
Wait, but by then the marches had already taken place.
Yes, because the money stayed. So if eventually we go to a point where a lot of the people who marched were released without, I think Kavumba, Dr. Kavumba, was instrumental calling out the judicial officer saying, why would you ask for money? These are just kids, blah, blah, blah. And a lot of people were released without the money being spent.
Okay, so the money was raised on the assumption that it would be needed
for people's bail and for getting them out in another way, transport, blah.
And then as it turned out, many of them were released without the need to pay.
Without much financial fight. So a lot of the money stayed.
Okay.
Now, some of the people who marched wanted that money given to them for marching.
As what?
First, funny.
For services,
we're going to march and then they'll come out and say, oh, because I marched, my landlord has chased me from my house, I need 3 months rent.
Yeah? Okay.
Oh, because I marched, I've lost my job. Can you take care of me for 3 months? Initially, we thought, well, maybe it's their money. Okay. It's not money for AGORA.
That must have opened a can of worms.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to. That's what I'm going to. That's what I said. You are misled. So the first time, some of those who were given part of that money.
Okay.
Now, at the end of it, there were those who simply wanted the money. The money was for marchers. We were the marchers. Agatha didn't even march in the first place. Mutuzo didn't even march in the first place. Why are they the ones having the money? You get? Now, that's where the confusion came. So people began accusing AGORA of failing to account for its money. This was not AGORA's money. Unfortunately, to her credit, to their credit actually, Agatha and Mutuzo elaborately went on Twitter and explained, this is the money we received. This is how it was spent. This is how much we still have. Now, when they showed that there were tens, I think about 20 plus million still in their custody, guys were like, no, what are you going to do with this money? Which was a very fair question. The money was actually collaboration with matches. The matching is done. So what are you going to do with the money? But the genius idea at that point was that let's not give anyone money for matching, the first thing. But if anyone gets arrested and they need bail, arrested in these things of, well, there will be other matches and all that. And yes, I can say authoritatively that this year, was it mid or early this year, part of that money contributed to Aaron Kiza's bail.
Okay.
The lawyer. part of that money has contributed to pay of some other people to this date is still contributing.
Do you see how it could be a problem nonetheless, even though those are very valid causes, in my opinion? But once it starts to become a fund to be used at will for purposes that the custodians may feel...
Each time it's used, Agatha gives accountability. At least...
Okay, so she will announce that this is what we're using.
This much has been used for this. She will give accountability. But also, the guys gave her the money for these causes. Yeah? Is it a similar cause to the one for which they contributed? In my view, you could disagree. I think yes, it is. Yeah? The other alternative would be to give people money, which would then feed into the narrative of the government that people are paying too much.
That's what I was about to get to. Like the idea that, I marched, where's my money? It just is the wrong message, the wrong things. 100%. It just says, also they do it for money. It validates those accusations.
Yeah, and that's what you're trying to stay away from. You don't have to stay away from that. And I can assure you, Fatboy, the people who marched genuinely did it, most of them, because of their issues with corruption. I don't think Aloy Kinprey's expected money. Then there was the other case where these guys met the EU. That's another problem that came up.
Because I remember the twins actually claimed to have been the originators of the idea for the march.
I don't know. Because I don't know how it originated. All I know is that there's a guy called King James who hosted a number of spaces. I think at that time he was in exile. So at the start of last year, James was arrested.
Yeah.
He did a solo? No, there were two people. Do you know Suna James King? And some other guy, I forget his name, probably remember in the course of the discussion. They get arrested at the floor of Parliament trying to protest against the Speaker's corruption, even before the Parliament exhibition. Now, Suna James King comes out and I think there was threats to arrest him and to punish him. And he runs to exile in Kenya for a while. So while he was in Kenya, that's where the Gen Z protests in Kenya happened. So I think it's like, if these Kenyans are marching over a bill, this is much less than the issues we have in Uganda. So he begins hosting spaces, discussions, and I think people like Aloy Kinprey and the twins join in those discourses. So to some extent, maybe they were part of the initiators because James was abroad, outside Uganda. There was only so much he could do. These guys were here. And then it gets to a point, the march was announced maybe a month, 2 months early. In that whole time, people were mobilizing, posting Twitter spaces and all this, and there's all this hype. As the weeks of the march, it became a talk of the town. Yeah, we're going to make a big thing. Everyone was like, what's going to happen? At that point, I was like, do I go home regionally? Or do I first find somewhere to stay? Because while AGORA, and I must say this, AGORA was really not the initiator of the march. That one you can agree. But there were many people who thought AGORA was. So they were blaming Poe. Because then there was the Parliament exhibition that AGORA did.
Yeah, and I think also once the march was announced, many of the prominent AGORA personalities were actively promoting.
Yeah, would support any protest.
We would
exactly the same protest.
So and because you guys tend to have a much larger following,
yes,
the algorithms kept boosting your posts.
Yeah.
So you are the guys we were. You almost unwittingly, due to the algorithm, became the faces of the protest.
Yeah,
I don't know if you realize.
Especially because we had done the Parliament exhibition.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's true. But then, I know that at some point the government had a problem with saying, can we know who is behind this thing? Yeah, like it's wild if you don't know who is behind the thing. That's what I was saying about the social media accounts. Like, if you don't know who is the guy, you can't negotiate with him, first of all. You can't even arrest him. So at some point, there was a group, Praise, I think the twins, Victor and Yomuhachi. There were about 5 young guys who eventually started meeting people about the march. So they wrote to the police, for instance, about the march. Because they wrote to the police, they became the face of the march. Now, at that point, they reached out to Agatha. Because of our work, she has some connections that people find valuable for such work. So they're like, can we have some guarantees? For instance, if we're arrested, what will the EU do for us? Now, I was not part of that meeting, but I am told in that meeting, some people asked for money to be facilitated to march. In that same meeting, it was a small meeting of maybe about 6 people. In fact, they didn't meet the EU. They met the human rights in charge of EU. He didn't reach out to meet them. They reached out to meet him. He was hearing about the march for the first time.
The human rights guy
of EU at that time. He's no longer the one.
Okay, so it's like an official working.
Yeah, most embassies in Uganda from the West have a human rights person.
All right, so he was seeing the noise, or hearing the noise.
No. They reached out to him.
Also, they first reached out to him.
Yes, okay. And said that we need some protection. There's likelihood that our human rights are going to be violated, and human rights are going to be violated because of the march. So can you guarantee us that you will ensure that we are protected? And the guy is like, for us to be sure that people's rights are protected, if it's issuing a statement, we can do it. If it's using some diplomatic channels, engaging the government, we can do it. And up until that point, I don't think there was any foreign organization.
But in those conversations, there was a request for money
from some of the people,
which we can assume was not granted.
It wasn't granted.
Okay.
Because in the same meeting, there were those who were saying, no, we don't need money. And this was a very small group of 6 people. Those were saying, we need some money just in case we can run for exile. They were like, come on, we haven't even matched. You get it? Like, can we first match? If there's anything about money, it can only come much later. So the consensus wasn't there about the money. Yeah. And so the EU literally gets out of the picture at that point. Now, the match happens. And when it happened, some people were arrested, a lot of people. Some people who were in the meeting were not even arrested. They seem to have gone a while, or they seem to have been lucky enough that whoever was arresting it arrested them. So internally they have these discussions of, how come the other guys aren't arrested? Which I think, well, you can be lucky not to get arrested. Yeah, I know people have been striking forever and they never get arrested simply because they're lucky. But then that disintegration that started at the EU meeting keeps coming, and then it gets to a point where Agatha is irrationally being blamed for stealing the match. You became the face of the match, yet you didn't even participate. You are not there in our initial meeting. Then it became a big deal. That's how the thing came about. Then the money that she had received is fuel to the flames. Why is she receiving our money? Why is she telling us how to spend our money? This money was given for matches. Yeah, but people who trusted the money, I mean, they could send you the money as individual matches, but they chose to give it to someone whom they think is more credible or more reliable to receive it.
It's very funny. So it's almost as though it was only due to circumstance that it began to be perceived as an Agora-led protest.
Yeah.
You are only loosely
proximity of the thing.
You're only loosely connected to some of the aspects of it.
Exactly.
But somehow you just got thrust into the limelight and assumed to have been the ringleaders of the organizers of the whole.
Yes. And then the final thing is that now the accountability question starts with this money. Agatha gives accountability. Then they switch and say, by the way, Agora receives money from ABCD and they have never accounted for this money. Which is very, very interesting. So first, so Agora had an NGO exhibition. During the NGO exhibition, for me, the main things that came out was that some NGO leaders in Uganda were not paying their workers, which is a very serious thing because there's evidence you're receiving money to pay workers and you're not paying the workers. So how cruel can you be if you're going to ask for accountability from government, but you can't do the basic of saying, maybe he's corrupt, but can he at least face workers? I'm not saying corrupt.
No, I mean, to be honest, I think that's a very valid line of inquiry. No one should be above reproach. Like
100%.
If you're
including Agora.
Including. But then, why is it that when Agora began to receive criticism, rightly or wrongly, I remember Jim reflexively, like he would draw cartoons about how also now those who are trying to call out the rot in the system are being attacked.
Yes.
This is what was expected.
Yes.
And yet, the funny thing is, that's what the NGOs that Agora were exposing were also saying.
Yes.
We are doing our work. Agora has it in it for us. They're against us. We don't know their agenda. So I found it amusing that it sort of came full circle to where when Agora was receiving negative attention, and, just because you receive negative attention doesn't mean the allegations are true. Yeah? But I mean, at least it means
you have the courtesy to listen.
You have the courtesy to listen and to offer a response and to not immediately deflect by accusing your critics of having some sort of agenda, because that's what was said of them when they were exposing the other NGO.
Yeah, but then, so first I'm not going to speak for Spire. I don't know where it was coming from, but personally, when you posted, remember that I replied under your tweet, Richard? One of your tweets, I replied under it. One of the very first tweets you made about the accountability issue. Mm-hmm. I came and explained and said, this is one of the things I'm telling you now. Agora does receive money as an organization, doesn't ask for money. Does Agora account for that money 100% to the donors and to all other stakeholders? Yeah. So I think if you Uganda no came to Agora and said, what do you guys use the money you receive for? I think Agora could actually give you accountability. But also what Agora cannot do is go on Twitter and say, we receive money from organization ABCD. They'll first of all close that organization that is giving us money. We are both funders anonymous and say, we're going to give you money, but we don't want people to know that we're giving you money. The organizations that
can I ask, is that not a potential problem?
It is.
Because I think it's only fair if you are receiving money to engage in civic or civil activity in a country I think not just the government, but even the citizens should know if, where you're getting that money from.
Yeah, so what we do on our website is we post our partners. Many of them offer us moral support, some financial support, and we post that there. But the problem is, you see, we're not operating in the normal environment of an NGO, say like in Kenya or in America. Because let me tell you, Fatboy, for real, DGF was closed in Uganda, the Democratic Governance Facility. It was funding NGOs. The government of Uganda is so paranoid that there are particular organizations, if they know you're funding that organization, they would come hard on you. You can't start a GoFundMe in Uganda because of those restrictions. You can't. So,
wait, help me understand. So, like, if an organization in, say, Europe offered money to an organization that the government here doesn't like, you're saying that the government here can start to give that organization a hard time?
If they can.
If they can. And there will be some of those organizations
and
who rather not deal with that?
Yes.
But I don't understand.
So many organizations.
But if these are Western, surely they would see themselves as being above any potential repercussions.
So first of all, for convenience, most guys just don't want anything that gives them trouble. Yeah? So many donors from the Western world fund through their embassies. They fund through entities that are based in Uganda. Yeah? And point blank, a lot of Western funders in Uganda have interests in Uganda. They deal with the government. So you see, for instance, I think the ambassador of the UK met Muhoozi recently. Yeah, the ambassador of Germany has been on his bad side, but probably also met him at some point. So they have interests that they also want protected. You get? So even a single organization in the West, many times when it's going to fund you, they have to pass through their embassy. They have protocols.
Okay, so I think the argument is that they are probably already dealing with our government at different levels for different things. It could be security, regional security, oil,
agriculture, so many things.
All that kind of thing.
Yes.
Which to them are very strategically important.
Yes.
While at the same time, they may want to assist civil society groups.
Yes.
Now you're saying if the government deems these civil society groups to be a problem and realizes that you're the one funding them, it could thwart the other discussions happening about oil exploration, about
uses that as a carrot and stick
to increase their leverage in, say, a negotiation and so forth.
Yes. That's why the government of Uganda has ensured that funding for NGOs has really come down. It's much less. People who started NGOs in the 2000s. So in 2005, there was something called the Global Fund. Remember that scandal?
Yeah.
Where a lot of money given to government was misused. So many Western governments at that point said, if we can't deal with the government because it is corrupt and not even holding the people we know are corrupt accountable, we can find alternative sources of funding. That's why NGOs became like a bomb. If you check the data, the number of NGOs just went overnight because they were giving a lot of the money that was given to government now channeled through NGOs. So because of that, also the phenomenon of briefcase NGOs came up. I'm not going to defend all NGOs. A lot of NGO people are corrupt, like the NGO exhibition showed. So back to your issue, particularly, AGORA tried to explain 100%. I belabored. In fact, guys at AGORA were saying that, why are you trying to explain to guys who are not going? And I said, many of them need this. And I know many people who read my response and said, yes, because of this, these guys have accounted. Now, the question was that the money received from Agafa's mobile money and Mutuzo's money and the money Mutuzo received were then conflated and mixed up with the money AGORA receives. And then to the question of who funds AGORA? How come AGORA never gives accountability? Yeah, it was very, very vaguely put out. Some people fell for it. I think one of those people fell for it. But then I can challenge. If you came to AGORA tomorrow and asked us about how we spend up, we shall show you. I know for a fact that I work with AGORA, and if I work with probably any other organization, probably I would receive much more money than I receive at AGORA. You get it? But a lot of the guys at AGORA we look out for each other. We look out for people who have similar interests. We are like, now we don't have money. Is it possible for you to first of all do some consultancy, write for NGOs, and you go and do that? They will call me and say, Toko, win the paper on freedom of expression. I am a lawyer, well trained. I research, I give them the paper, and they pay me maybe what AGORA pays me in a year. One paper. You get it? So it's a well-knit group of people who understand the interests they're supposed to serve, and they serve that interest of the average Ugandan. I'll finish with this. 2 weeks ago, I posted something on TikTok. I rarely post on TikTok. I'm not a big fan of that. But I hate the algorithms that you just watch videos and they don't end in perpetuity. Just annoys me. So I posted something, and the lady came and said, it was actually a video I posted of a gentleman who was coming to Uganda from South Africa, where he's based, he's a Ugandan, and he was abducted and held for weeks. The lady came and said, they've also abducted my father. Then I say, who is your father? I engaged her. So she gave me details, she put me in touch with her sister who is here. Turned out they've been holding their father for 8 weeks. Yeah, like literally the man was picked from his marketplace where he works, and they've held him for 8 weeks. He doesn't know if he committed an offense. His family don't know if he committed an offense. His family don't know where he is, but eventually they got to know where he is. They have credible information that is being held by the state. But even then, they cannot put their hands on the chalkboard because it's not 100% I know. You get it? So a lot of the work at Agora is stuff like that. People, you don't even see us doing it, but it's work that we do. And the other thing with it is that then it also gets to your head. There are days when I get home and I'm so angry. And you're thinking, I shouldn't transfer the anger to people who are close to me, the lovely, nice family members who are close to me, because of what I faced at the workplace. You get it? But it's also equally very, very draining. So yeah, that's it about Agora.
So, and to your point, it just seems like it almost feels like a no-win situation, right? Where even the people you think you're trying to help might sometimes view you negatively. In that example of the questions about the accountability.
A lot.
For me personally, where I inserted myself in these conversations was around the time of the protest, where I felt that because of what you explained earlier of how Agora came to be seen as the face of the protest.
Yes.
And that's where I also jumped in and I'm like, okay, so who are these guys overhyping this, telling people to march? And you in particular, you were quite actively promoting the march.
Yes.
And I'm like, these guys, like they're telling people's kids to go out and march, put themselves potentially in harm's way.
Yeah.
They're probably not going to march themselves. These guys work in an NGO for which they receive funding. So this for them is a career, it's a job to encourage other people's kids to get out there and march. I think that's where I came in and that was my line of criticism. And of course, the pushback was, oh, well, what are you doing for the country? We're trying to do something for the country. To which I said, well, no one elected you to be my savior. It's one thing if one has a passion to do change, but then to somehow then require some sort of
everyone should do what I'm doing.
That we should worship you. And I've never criticized you, that you're beyond reproach because you claim what you are doing is for a noble cause. I had a problem with that too.
So here's my point of divergence with you. It's definitely not Agora people who said that to you. Yeah? It is some random guy on Twitter.
Your supporters.
Well, how are they my supporters? This guy is my whole life. I'll probably never meet.
No, not blaming you. I'm just saying people who probably are happy with what you're doing.
Yes. So here is the thing that I take. One, let me give you an example. There was a time Kabushenga tweeted about coffee. How coffee prices have become there was an issue with coffee prices. Blah. This was 2021. And Kabushenga had left New Vision not long ago. So typical Toko, the activist, I come and say, you're now talking because you lost your job. You would never talk when you're in government. And Kabushenga could have told me openly, could have called me out and all that. I like what he did because we're following each other. Came to my DM and said, by the way, Toko, you people, you will never know a lot of what other people do that you can never see. Recently, I've come to think a lot about that. And I say to people who are activists that don't get carried away. Don't get carried away by what you see. A lot of what you don't see is equally important.
What does that mean?
There are people who are in government. Yeah? They're drawing a salary from government. When you say let's match payment, they'll never match. But probably the guy is the one who gave you the voucher. He had access to it because no one at Agora has the voucher. He's probably the guy who risked his job and say, here is the voucher, there's corruption, please expose this. You get. So that guy is contributing to the struggle as much, in fact, probably even more than Toko. You get. So for me, I've come to be a bit more humble, a bit more appreciative that people play roles differently. Even within the activists, there's always this argument of social media activists versus street activists. Who is doing more? Yeah, if I can't go to the street and I can tweet, don't think that it's a normal thing. Because sometimes I'll tweet and that tweet will mark the fact that I'll never get a government job. I've taken a big risk in doing so. You can go to the street, well and good, go to the street. For as long as I'm not standing in your way to say, don't go to the street, I think all of us are activists in that regard.
So in your opinion, there should be no hierarchy in how we view people's contributions.
And
no one is more important than another.
Yeah, and I think there is this argument that Africans make their dictators. Because then You pick Toko because Toko is saying what you are seeing guys tweeting and saying, I want this government, spy president, under the vice president, Toko prime minister. Guys, I'm even struggling with my family. Why do you have to be a prime minister of the whole country? So, like, I keep thinking about these things and thinking, if someone calls me out, and by the way, I take a lot of criticism on Twitter, probably more than you do. Yeah. But for me, the point is always simple. Why is he criticizing me? Do I know this person? Yes. Can I explain this out? And many times, I do explain and understand and say, okay, I understand your perspective. Yeah. So there should be a level of humility. There's a book I read some time back called The Tyranny of Merit. I think you should read it. By a gentleman called Michael Sandel. Michael was talking about this idea of people celebrating certain people and certain performances more than others. Yeah. So basically, James has a heart problem. He goes to Mulago. Dr. Kasule treats him, and James comes out, and everyone in James' family is that, was it for Dr. Kasule, James would never have lived. Fair point and very true. But as James was being operated, there were nurses who no one will talk about. Yeah, before the nurse and the doctor walked in, there was a lady who stays in Katanga, earns 200,000, who came and mopped the place. That mopping contributed. There is an askari called Okelo who opened the gates for James and Dr. Kasule and all these guys to come in. So each of those is playing a very, very important role. That collectively then becomes James getting cured of his problem. You get it? So for me, I would encourage other activists and everyone out there that you don't get overtaken by this thing. You're doing a good job. You should be commended, but don't let it get to your head. Don't become a celebrity. Yeah, there should be no celebrities in this thing. It's just we each put our contribution. So if you're seeing someone not doing what you want them to do, engage them.
What do you feel about and to that point, about the general tone of political debate? Now, we've got our nominees for president.
Yeah.
8 of them, and they have different supporters.
Yeah.
We're now seeing a lot of the supporters clash, not physically yet, thankfully, but online. It can get pretty vicious, where they will say very negative things to the people that belong to another party or support another candidate. I do find that a lot of the people who support Bobi Wine, which they have every right to do, and they should if that's what they believe, I feel that they're not very kind to those who don't fully agree with their agenda or even their methods. They may agree with the agenda, but maybe not the methods or tactics.
Yeah.
For example, when even their own supporters are asking questions about iPod and things like this, the response from the more diehards to those even asking questions is, oh, there you go, regime apologist.
Yeah.
Traitor, government spy.
Yeah.
Do you think that's healthy? And I know it comes from a place of frustration. You're feeling put down by things, by the government, and maybe you just have this visceral urge to just want to lash out at everyone, even asking questions. Do you not think they need to appreciate the fact that that may not be a good approach?
Yeah, but first, it's both camps. Yeah, even the ruling party camp.
That's not true.
No,
I can.
Let me give you an example.
I can insult or say not very flattering things about the government or its handlers or their people. In the comments, there's not going to be anyone. No one's going to care.
Maybe
I say one critical thing about NUP, and that's it. If I say a week is finished.
When I say critical things about the government, the reverse is true. So if I said, for instance, like this road is bad, should be made, I'll get a lot of sticks for that from the government people on social media. Yeah. So I think it's both ends.
You think?
I think it's both ends. Maybe one is more. No probably controls social media in Uganda. I think they have more followers there. There's a popular video where Bobo said, I'm encouraging all of you to go on Twitter. Like, if they post, comment and all that. So maybe that's why a lot of his supporters are on Twitter. Yeah, it's counterproductive. It doesn't help anyone. Yeah. I asked the question about iPod myself. I said, why are you going back to iPod after saying this in ABCD? Well, maybe because I'm a bit more privileged. The Secretary General reached out to me and said privately, the reasons are ABC. Then I was like, okay, I buy this. Sasi Marvin, who is a member of NUP, met me last weekend. We spent some time. He was trying to enunciate to me what really happened, which is good. So I think they managed to win me over. So I think the problem here is that while NUP does have people speak for it, we should be kind also to NUP, not to make everyone speak for it. Yeah? Like, who speaks for NUP? If someone has a profile picture of Bobi Wine,
And that's the thing. A lot of the time it's anonymous accounts, but with Bobby in the profile.
Yeah, but is it possible for me to have a picture of Museveni and then insult you? would you then hold Museveni accountable? Because sometimes I feel like it's possible that some of these guys are probably not even supporters. They probably hate
Someone actually made that point to me. He said, actually, how do you even know those are Bobby Wine fans? And I said, what do you mean? Are you telling me that someone gets a profile, puts Bobby Wine in his profile pic, insults someone criticizing Bobby Wine, and you're saying that's like an NRM supporter trying to make Bobby Wine look bad?
So I'm 100%.
Is that possible?
I'm not saying it is that, but I'm saying it could be that. Yeah, it could also be that.
I guess anything is possible.
So because so for me, at the end of the day, if Alex Wise from Mufumbiro, Joel Senyonyi, Sasi Marvin, Bobby Wine himself, David Lewis Ruvongwea, they are those people, Mwanga Chivumbi. If they did that, I'll be like, now this is nope. In law, there is something called agents. Yeah, who is an agent? If someone wore a shirt with Fatboy and went out slapping people, is that person? Should we blame that on Fatboy because he said, I like Fatboy, or I get my advice from Fatboy on his shirt? Then he moves around slapping people. Do we say that, oh, Fatboy gave him that advice?
Well, then it invites questions about the concept of leadership. There's a video I saw of Norbert Mao where he was criticizing NUP about their leadership. To paraphrase him, I think he was arguing that too often NUP allows the crowd to dictate the agenda. I think in this instance, he was speaking about processions and, he was saying, you're the leader. You're not supposed to ask, where do we go next? You're the one supposed to... Did you see that video?
Yeah, I saw it.
So do you think there is a tendency for the NUP leadership to lean too much into the energy of the supporters, which is very strong, the energy? Do you think they kind of yield to it more than they should? And do you think there are times where you feel like the leadership should be more forceful in dictating how everyone should sort of just get on board and get with the program? Because if, as you say, it's not healthy for a lot of their supporters to be behaving in ways that may not reflect poorly, that may reflect poorly on the party generally. Yeah. But why I think the leaders sometimes are happy to see that energy and they just sort of leave it alone.
Yeah,
rather than try to.
If you're a political party like NUP, a lot of the guys in NUP now were not in politics 5 years ago. Mao has the advantage of hindsight, probably. He has been in politics for how long before? Probably since from the 90s, university days and all that. So I have a lot of criticism for NUP. Probably the reason you don't see me put it out on Twitter is that I meet...
You fear for...
No. I have the advantage for your life. I really...
For your peace.
No. I mean, I've told the guy who would roast you have the ability to send a drone to pick me up at night. So I don't fear trolls on Twitter.
Okay.
That'll be my problem. But maybe the only difference is that I have this advantage that I can send David Lewis a text and say, I need to understand this. And he's like, come. Maybe that you don't have, and I have that. So for me, most times, it's that I meet them, and then they give you their viewpoint, and you agree with them.
First, explain to me. So what did they explain to you about iPod that you found convincing? Because your view, and for most people, is, hey, it seems hypocritical. You criticized this program. You said you wanted no part of it. You said it was immoral and wasteful. Then turn around and say you want to come on board. I mean,
I still hold that view. I still think Noop shouldn't have gone back to iPod.
Okay, but are you convinced by the reasons they have given you through your back?
I see where they're coming from.
We all know where they're coming from.
After listening,
that's not the issue.
Yeah.
We know where they're coming from.
Yeah.
They need money.
Yes.
But still, it doesn't make it right.
Yeah, the flip-flopping is against principles. It looks really bad on them. Yeah? Even privately, when I'm talking to them, some of them say, yeah, even when they were leaving, there was these discussions that maybe we shouldn't. You get like internally, there was this discussion, maybe we shouldn't and all that. What do you guys think about that, the iPod thing?
No, I think everybody is getting it wrong. Initially, iPod was something that President Museveni, actually, let's be blunt. President Museveni, who introduced it and says, you know what, guys, if you're talking like, oh, this is the issue that is making you guys make noise for me that I'm not doing, you come on the table and we talk.
I think it was more of an NGO thing that got the idea from Ghana.
That was the initial thing.
Okay.
You bring your issues that you're complaining about,
I address them.
And stop, we talk. Now, some people are like, okay, now you're bringing, because you see, even if Museveni is not the chairman, when he walks into iPod, he's treated differently as a president.
Yeah.
You understand? Even if he has no, because you're supposed to be equal. That, okay, I'm a party president of NUK, party president of NRA, party president of DP. We're supposed to be equal. but spiritual is different. So that's why some people are issuing with it. Now, that's why Bobby Wine said, no, you guys are bringing this. This is, it's, you want to put a photo moment with me.
Oh, so that's why they don't want to.
Yes, that's why
They want to humiliate them by having them stand next to the president.
now you receive that part, go to the international community and be like, this guy is a dictator. But why are you shaking hands, smiling with the dictator? That's why they said we are not joining. IPO. But now, Mao and his other groups were like, okay,
They change the law.
all want to come and shake hands. We are going to tie this money.
Membership.
You remember the past letter Rugongoya wrote was, you guys are sitting as iPod and making decisions that will affect all of us. Why are we not invited? You remember that letter?
Yeah.
First went around.
Yeah.
Then they're like, okay, if that is the case, sign the memorandum. That is when Rugongoya now writes and says, okay, if there is some document you want us to sign, so that the next time you will invite us to the meeting, bring the document and we sign. So they can still choose to go and attend the meeting and pause. You understand? I think that's where everybody got it wrong. It's not necessarily about money per se, but of course it's partly tied to the money, because now I'm saying you don't participate. It's just like, say, if you're invited to attend the meeting and you don't show up and you're like, oh, please send my party on
Mobile map.
That's a good way of putting it. So they're like, no. You come to the mission and sit the oldest.
You think it's a humiliation ritual?
Yes. iPod. Have you seen the letter they've sent them? Because good say they want to join now, and they're telling them, this you don't just say you want to join. First, go and send us an expression of interest, and reconsider it if you're going to. Yeah, that's part of the humiliation.
It is lousy because by virtue of it being a political organization
With membership in parliament,
they're already part of it.
they should.
This time, all that Lupo saying is, send us the document everybody signed. But it's like, you're not going to tell them, oh, please, it'll express interest. No, part of it, this group.
I hear you. James, back to the main issue you said at the start of this. All political parties in Uganda need to win people over. I know people who were part of NUP and they've left. They've said, seeing what I have seen, I am now out. Yeah? And I also know the hypocrites who were part of NUP, very, very happy with whatever was going on. When they are not given the flag, or when they fell out with NUP and NUP expelled them, then they begin saying, you sent people to attack me. If they not sent people to attack you probably. It's probably because you left with a corruption scandal that is on your neck, like maybe like a stone that is going to send you to sink. But at the end of the day, I think political parties, and I had this conversation. See, I had a podcast with the NRM spokesperson, Dombo, and I was telling him the same thing. He was telling me how people want that. Why they have many districts? People want that. Then I kept thinking, no, you're the leaders. Yeah, sometimes you need to stamp your foot. I told him that, you see, as a parent, my kids want everything. They want a plate, they want pizza, they want. At some point, I don't have the money, and I'm like, you're not going to get that. You get it because then you're the parent. So I think all leaders in Uganda, that's a lesson for them. That if you're the leader, don't get overly carried away, because the thinking of the crowd is not always right. Crowds can actually lose their mind. Crowds have lost their mind many times, so they want to take you everywhere. So if you're the leader, you must stamp your foot and say, we are not going to have that, and we'll never have it.
So then,
That's you see, I think people have lost this argument of crowds in Uganda. I've been following quite a bit. I see NIM based share. Some
That's a different word. Yeah.
of them are edited, group shares. I think maybe you should blame Electoral Commission for not playing its part in civic education. Because when we are at school, when we are being taught about elections and stuff, even if I support NUB, even if I support NRM, even if
I'm supposed to go to the rally.
I'm supposed to go to every rally.
Listen and then make up my mind.
To make up my uniform decision.
Yeah.
You understand? So this issue of crowd, I don't know where people are getting worked on.
so you're not convinced by crowds when you see these rallies with huge crowds. Are these people mostly there for free things?
No. Now, the Ugandan politics right now is very commercialized.
Yeah.
That, like for NRL, for example, 90% of people who go there, I don't want it to take it in the wrong way, but 90% of the people go there. They go there for freebies, t-shirts, they go there for
Cash. Yeah.
and the
Transport refund, what?
which is okay. And I know because I do documentaries, I go to villages. I have gone to communities, and you find somebody washing and reusing a t-shirt of Museveni of 1996. Yeah, I see that.
That's impressive.
So they report that they picked that t-shirt. He has gotten a clothes for Christmas.
Yeah, it's the connected copy. Yes. Yeah. That's actually
All right, so that's the incentive structure. So what do you think? Because I saw, Bobby Wine in Busia. I mean, immense crowds. Like Michael Jackson, when Michael Jackson would go to a city for a show, like in front of his hotel, the just
crowd.
thousands. I got the same vibes with the Bobby.
DX, Woodstock.
Same thing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and that's great. It's great that he's attracting that interest, that energy. Do you think, though, that that may translate or not translate into any electoral outcomes? What do you think about
So I think one, Bobby Wine, Besigye, even Museveni, they all know that elections are really for the show. That is clear. Bobby Wine has said this, Museveni has said this, Besigye has said this. Elections are really just so one around from the early 90s. The West became more assertive because that was the end of the Cold War. The Cold War ends in 1890. So from the end of the Cold War, the dominant force around the world becomes the Western world. The Western world wants to deal with governments that have elections. Initially, those elections were kind of consequential because Moi, for instance, gets to a point where his party loses. He didn't participate 2002, but yeah, it moves on. A number of African governments, I think even Zambia. But since then, there's a joke that Americans sit and think of how to put down African governments. Yeah. How to hold them accountable. Then these African governments sit and think how to be ahead of the game. So I think what has happened since then is that elections have become a ritual. We must have elections. Yes. Why? Because elections give you legitimacy as a government. In 2020, 2021, 2022, there were so many African countries supposed to have elections in that year. But because of COVID, many of them didn't have it. One of them was Ethiopia. But the civil war in Ethiopia was because the Tigray region organized their own elections. The federal government didn't organize an election. Then they said, on such and such a date, your mandate expires, won't recognize you. Then they went to war.
Yes.
But for Uganda, President Museveni has been so smart to ensure that there is always an election. Is there COVID? We'll still have the election. Now, I think elections give him legitimacy at the end of the day to the point that he will say, but I was elected. It's hard to argue if he says, but if he's negotiating with the World Bank guys, and the World Bank guys say, you've been president since 1986, he says, yeah, but I've been elected each time. So it gives him the legitimacy that if we didn't have elections for 10 years, so it will take away that criticism.
So basically, it's just a rubber stamp ritual.
A rubber stamp.
But
ritual.
if that...
But for the opposition, Besigye said this. It is an important thing to mobilize people and drive certain agenda. If Besigye tried to move out of his house to go and have a rally in Katwe, the police would stop him any one time. But during elections, they stop him less than they would. So it gives him a window to reach out to people, to mobilize them, talk about issues. And to his credit, that also works because many times he will go to a hospital like Amuru. Was it Amuria? There was also he visited in Karamoja one time where he surprised everyone. I think it was the 2016 campaign circle. So he goes to this hospital and just walks in as a physician himself. He shows that people sleeping on the floor and all that. It was a big scandal for the government, who then ran backward and provided beds, did everything. So win for the people. The people of Uganda won that those was equipped. But so in those small instances, Boba and Uganda show you a road that has never been worked on. And then it gets worked on. And for me, this particular election, I'm so far happy that the police and the security apparatus have become more laid back.
Restrained.
More restrained.
Can we just talk about that? Because I think in my conversations with Anthony Natif, I was saying this, that it just, the energy, how can I say, there seems to be less tension in the air.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's just early days, because usually around this time of the election cycle, there's arrests, abductions, like the usual riots. And yet now things seem cool. I'm not seeing too much intervention by police in the processions and activities of, opposition politicians. I don't know if that is by design, or is it just that, or they may argue that no, they're they're operating as we want them to, so we're not bothering them. What do you think? Do you think they're just letting them go?
Would you believe that Norbert Mao speaks for the government of Uganda as a minister?
I would guess so.
Yeah, because there's a video of him saying, people want to be arrested to become popular. No one is going to arrest you. You'll do whatever you want. It's a recent video, I think about 3 days ago. So I think both sides should take credit, including the police, including the government of Uganda. Yeah, because
wait. So are you saying they're deliberately restraining themselves
if we are to believe
so as to not give them,
if we are to believe Norbert Mao, yes,
free attention?
Yes, if you are to believe Norbert Mao, yes.
Because all it's going to take is one arrest, and that'll consume the news cycle for a week.
Yeah. But also, even by this time in election circles, there would have been a lot of stopping, a lot of sometimes arrests and all that never happened by now. So it seems a bit. And people are saying it doesn't have vibe. If vibe is people dying, then let's not have vibe. I'm okay with it the way it is. Because, like I said, the outcome of this election is a foregone conclusion for most, including the participants. Many of them know what it's going to turn out like. Yeah. What we get, if it happens like that and there's no death, the last election had 50-something, according to official figures. Some other figures have put it much higher. I think of people like that lady who was selling food. She probably has orphans now.
Danu died during the November.
Yeah, who was shot? Kamayat. There was a kid going to school who was shot, and the mother lost a son. There was a guy who was doing internship at a garage somewhere in Chambo, and he was shot. So I feel like there's no point if it's the US election where it's on the line. It can swing either way. Then maybe people died will say, oh, it's unfortunate, but yeah, maybe. But it's the Ugandan election. Like, we know what's going to happen. We know how it's going to turn out. But so let it come without violence.
So what does that say to the supporters? Because if you're telling me, basically, the opposition parties are going in knowing it's just for show, isn't that not a betrayal to the supporters who genuinely believe that they think they have a chance at change?
No, like I've said...
And who is to say there can't be change? Have there not been recent upsets here in Africa?
Like I've said, one...
Well, like Senegal, no one thought that...
Those are on the... No, Senegal was known. People knew the president would lose.
Oh, yeah?
Yes, people knew that. Many predicted that. So, and that's why he was reacting the way he reacted, arresting these guys and all that, which was counterproductive anyway. But what I'm saying is that I'm not saying push you and gun vote. I'm not saying, see, one thing people call me political analyst sometimes, but I feel that there are no analysts of politics. Politics has so many things happening that we don't know at any one point in time that could change everything you're talking about. You get it? We can be talking about the election, and one of those, there's a death somewhere that changes everything. You get? The state can say, please treat Bobo with the kid gloves, blah, blah, for this section. There is some random drunkard soldier who goes and unleashes bullets and everything changes. Get it? So, for me, at any one point, I think that politics is not predictable. I don't think many people predicted that President Museveni would be president for this long, even just 20 years ago. I don't think many people predicted. So, I'm always cautious not to act like, well, because it happened here, it will happen here, and then this will happen. No. So, from what I see as Toko, it's possible that there can be a change of guard in Uganda through an election. But the likelihood is really minimal. If you have to go by probabilities and say out of percentages, maybe like 5%. Yeah, 5%. Things that have had 5% in the past have happened. But it's a very rare occurrence. That's the first thing. The other thing is that, like I said, for them it is a chance to mobilize. For them it is a chance to interact with their voters. Since 2001, Besigye has participated in elections in Uganda. And you see, there is room for more discussions now than there was in 2001. Yeah, I've had the privilege that I started trying to understand politics and read about things like this when I was still, as 2001 election, I was in P1. So from even the 2001 election, I followed. Yeah, I followed. I read newspapers, I got people listen to radio and all that. So for all the elections I followed, you see that after each election, there are some decisions that are taken that can benefit the whole country. There are some things that happen. Like I said, Besigye goes to a random hospital and says, let's go there. First of all, I think the most immediate reaction, the negative one, was that people were fired. Like I think the Askari was fired, the doctor in charge was fired for allowing Besigye to come. Mm-hmm. But after they were fired, the two of them, and well, sorry for you guys who were fired. Hospital was equipped with some beds, some more drugs and all that, which was a good thing. So it's not 100% a zero consequence game. There are consequences that are beneficial to the people each time people participate in an election. And I've had people calling for a boycott of the election. They have every reason to. They have every reason, and I respect their position. But as Toko, I'll probably not vote. But you're not see me saying that, let's boycott the election. Why would you vote? No. If you want to vote, it's well and good. Go and vote. Maybe something will come out for you. And Another thing about these elections is that while they don't change the man at the top, they change everyone, a lot of people around him. You get? We are talking in 2025. But 2020 what? The vice president lost an election. Remember? He's no longer the vice president. So many ministers from Uganda, the Deputy Minister for Education, Minister for Lands, I think now. So many of those ministers lost an election. So the president is the alpha male at the top. But between him and us, there are so many other people. If the elections are going to change some of these people, it's a win. It's a positive.
All right.
But we should also take.
So why can you not tell us if you're going to vote or not?
I'll determine it in the weeks to come. When we get closer to, I'll see.
Do you not have a single candidate that you like?
I've seen their manifestos. Some of them are convincing. Some of them are not. But as we get closer to the election, it will become more vivid for me. Because
so at this point, you have no idea.
No, I'm one of those undecided voters. So Bobi Wine, Mugisha Muntu, Museveni, one of which should convince me to vote for them. As of now, I don't know who I'm going to vote.
Okay, but certainly I think Museveni is not among your considerations.
He can be.
He can be?
He can be. He can be.
You would consider voting for
Let me tell you, I tell NRM people.
I'm surprised to hear.
I tell NRM you, I can, if there are under certain circumstances. I keep telling NRM people, and I meet a lot of them. I meet a lot of See, one of the things about me is that I probably have more friends in NRM than in the opposition. Because I reach out to them and we talk. Now, I keep telling them that one of my biggest problems with your guy is that I think he is the most suited man to do certain things that he's not doing. You get Museveni. Like, I don't think, a guy who was 30-something and was thinking, let me go and learn how to use guns because I'll use it to impact change in my country. Then he becomes the president and seems like all you want to be is to be president for the sake of being the president. Why are Kampala roads looking like they are? If you could say, let me go to in 1987, this guy was thinking revolutionary enough to think and say, I don't have medicine. I have beans. Can I give the Cubans beans? And they give me medicine. Now that is the kind of Museveni that I want to see. If I saw that Museveni today, the one who says no more abductions, political prisoners, Eddie Mutwe, I disagree with you 100%. I think what you're saying is hogwash, but go out and do whatever you want. That's the same for all these guys. A guy who says that, these TikTokers who are abusing, probably will say they're abusing me. I don't think they're abusing him. These TikTokers who are abusing me, go get your freedom. Why am I spending 4 billion as the president of Uganda? Yet we are giving each kid in UPE just 20,000 per year. So let's increase the budget. Because you see, we're in the age of AI. James, you and me can afford to take our kids to better schools. But we're not taking everyone in Uganda because, and those kids are going to live in Uganda where kids went to schools where the government was spending 20,000 on them. They're going to be a drop in the ocean. So under certain circumstances, my disagreement with the system today is not personal. I'm a citizen of Uganda who has certain demands that I expect of my government. By and large, the government is not giving them to me yet. You get it? If they would meet those demands and their basic demands, can people just live in peace? Yeah? Can we be more accountable to each other? Can we start thinking, well, what does Uganda look like after Museveni? We can look like Sudan. You see, I stay in an apartment that had, I think, about 16 units. There was them accounted, and about half of those poor Sudanese. Yeah? I don't want to go and live in exile in Kenya if I can afford it, because Uganda has gone up in flames because certain decisions are not taken. So my thinking is that, and first of all, I think that President Museveni Uganda has been kind to him. When Nyerere led Tanzania for 26 years, said, you guys have been kind to me. No one thought that you could give me this long, because he came from a minority tribe and all that. And then he moved around the country thanking people and saying, thank you for voting me. So I think at 40 years, President Museveni should begin thinking and saying, these guys have been so kind to me. They've let me lead them for this long. Yeah. You see, when people say that you can't lead them, first it doesn't work. Gaddafi had more MiGs.
I think even Bobi Wine has expressed conciliatory sentiments. Yeah. As in, dude, thanks for what you've done, but step aside. It's enough.
Time to build on to that.
Yeah.
Because we've seen so many African presidents stick. Yesterday, I put a status on my WhatsApp and said, perhaps the best thing that happened to Odinga is that he didn't become a president. Because a lot of times, people who are our heroes
villains
until they become president. You get it? Again, President Museveni in the 80s was the guy. Onyango Bo, I hosted him on a space and he said he was in Zimbabwe and he gave his stamp to the officer to stamp in, and the guy saw Uganda, and the guy first put him aside. There was a queue building meanwhile, and they had a conversation for what? 30 minutes, the guy was asking him how it is to be in Uganda under the revolutionary Museveni in the 80s, you get it? Now, so probably if Museveni had stopped being president, maybe in 2000, probably Uganda would do us off. But for him at a personal level, probably we say, that guy was the best president. We are missing that guy.
Well, he says this is going to be his last time. So,
Yeah, he said that in that one. He said that in that scene.
oh dear.
So I don't trust.
I think you could do the Mandela kind of thing that you retire, appoint somebody who will listen to you, you can control and stuff like that. And then he will
And I'm in for that because I don't want us to move from two extremes. You get it? I don't want us to move from one extreme to another. I think Uganda would benefit from a lot of Museveni's experience and knowledge if he's no longer the president, but is humble enough to say, let me let this go. We put James Onen as the president of Uganda. I'll guide him for a period, which is what they're trying to do with Omeme and UECDL, which is failing horribly. And so, but I hope it would succeed in that case because Omeme and UEDCL had a 6 months period of learning from each other. So like, let me just leave this thing for 6 months, yeah? For these kind of months, someone takes over, we can guide it. Because, transition is a very weird thing. In the DRC, some guy rigged an election for number 3, made him a number 1. That guy who became number 1, sentenced the guy who announced him as president, the head of the electoral commission, first of all to death last year. And this year he has sentenced to death the president who had an election for him. You get it? Like this year. In Botswana, you know what happened in Botswana was that the president, when Ian Kama was the president, then he's like, I want this thing to stay within our party. So he got his vice president and said, it's called Masisi. He said, Masisi, you're going to be president for 6 months before the elections. So you get used. The president becomes president and does it 180 from the president that the president had to go and live in exile. The same thing happened in
So basically signaling
it's
to
a very troubled.
all entrenched leaders,
They end up not
not
getting
be
what they want.
foolish enough.
Yeah, like
to leave.
it seems like you work so hard. No, it's not signaling that. It's like when you try to manage the transition, you think you're on top of your game.
It never.
But it never works. So the thing is, maybe to manage it better is that you say, our countrymen, this is the turning point for all of us. Can we now have a conversation? So for instance, I see a lot of people about this election. People in the system seem to say, let's win this thing because after this Museveni is going to determine, and from people who know more about NRM, I interact with them. They're telling me that the SEC, the hula barley you saw with the SEC elections, because some people think that Museveni is now getting to the point where the transition question is going to happen. They just want to be somewhere where they ask a few questions so that they can also push their interests. It is never that easy. And the problem with it is that because it is not so easy, the line is like you're walking on a line. You can go either way. Some countries like Kenya, transition from Moi, things seem to have shot up. They no longer have, there's a leadership that is trying to come up under Ruto, but for a long time they didn't have that. Uganda, from Obote, the early days of Museveni, yes, we seem to have managed it well. Things moved fine. But you have Sudan, you have Libya, you have so many countries, Zimbabwe. There are countries that literally go from the pan to the fire. So what we could have been holding in high regard and saying, Museveni built that road, the road is no more, it has been bombed. You get. So I think it is.
Well, I worry. I honestly worry for the.
Yeah.
I worry for the future of the country, but I'm hopeful nonetheless.
Yeah, I'm also hopeful.
So
I'm also hopeful. I think there are some steps I've seen being taken that maybe may avert things. I don't know. I could say this. For instance, I think there was a time when there were discussions for thinking SFC and the regular army could be the RSF and the Rapid Support Force in Sudan, the Rapid Support Force and the Sudanese army. But now you see, for instance, that it seems like the line has been merged. Like SFC now. Well, I don't know, but yeah, there's an article that came out from the BBC yesterday saying that the article said that
that shadow army.
Yeah, shadow army and all that affects the president. But you could say that more and more. You see now SFC, the former commanders of SFC, are now the commanders of the main army. So it's like and the guys who used to command the ordinary army in a long time, most of them have been retired.
Because I think they keep shifting them around.
Yeah, I think they've learned some lessons from Sudan, and I hope that they don't stop at learning them. I hope that even us as Ugandans, it gets to that point where we realize that this is a very, very interesting affair to must handle like with kid gloves.
Well, thank you so much, Godwin Toko.
Man, thanks. This was really nice sponsorship. Yeah. Thanks.
All right, man.
Yeah.
All right, and please remember,
subscribe to bar
in Chanja. It's called the Wild Monkey. Right next door to the Northern Power, which is the barbershop that we're in right now. In fact, I got my haircut from here earlier, so I invite you to do the same if you're in the area.